And then
You mind if I record it? I apologize.
problem. Yeah, just asking for my permission. Do you want me to go back and start praising you again so we get it on
Oh,
tape?
sure. Always. No.
So the people there probably don't fully recognize the value of what they're getting. They just think they're going to a good local chiropractor. Like, no, you're not going to a good local chiropractor. You're going to one of the best in our profession's history. That's important because people will come in like, well, do you take my insurance? How are you different than the guy down the road? What type of adjusting is this? Should I choose this doctor over my medical doctor or the PT or the other chiropractor? And so it's important that they get that. I mean, this is not just the best in our community. He is literally one of the best in history. And that again is sometimes hard to get when you're just in the local office and it's just the two of you right now. And you can see he's got, building a second office, but also again, building a lot of other things, all throughout the world and helping the profession in a number of ways, not just there locally. So that you are in a really, important role there. And I love that your energy, like you get the mission. That's the part you're passionate about, the patients. And I'll start there because in these stub periods when you're missing staff, you don't quite understand the administration, you're just learning all the processes. The one thing that I've always seen that solves it all during these tough times is exactly where you started, which is the fact that it is a relatively simple business. If they know we love them, if we make sure they're getting the care they need, and if we make sure they're on track with their visits, then in the end, we're getting the job done. So for sure, there's behind the scenes stuff that we have to get to. There's parts of their plan that have to ideally be done correctly, processes, procedures, documentation we need to make sure we filled out. But ultimately, it is a pretty simple business. Love them, let them know how much you appreciate them, make sure they understand how serious the subluxation is, and that they stay on track with their care. It's really kind of simple. So we stick to the simple part right now. Eventually, it all comes together. We'll find this other employee. We'll catch up on some of the busy work and documentation. All that stuff will work itself out. When it goes wrong is if we allow the walls to close in on us. The fact that we're worried about the need for another employee, the fact that we're worried that we maybe haven't learned everything yet. And that impacts our ability just to care for the people, love the people, make sure they're on track with their care. If we disrupt that simple part, that's when it gets kind of messed up during these stub periods of time. What's really interesting, and I'll move on to the next thing, is some of my employees, the best they ever were was at the beginning when they didn't know anything, but they just focus on people. They like, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing, but I love these people. I love chiropractic. And they just did that and they were amazing. And as soon as they learned how to do stuff, they weren't good anymore. It's like, I liked you better when you didn't know anything, when you just loved people. So we don't want to lose that part. Second thing I'll say, I did want to share a little bit of, because Dr. Haig was saying, you were reading the Body by God stuff, right? You were looking at that.
Well, my father-in-law was really big into it many moons ago, but he actually gave me a copy of it when I was newlywed with his son.
Oh, okay.
My father. Yeah.
Okay.
And I haven't told him that I get to meet you face to face on the screen. But he'll be excited to know that because he's involved with a church here locally. And there was they'd have a lot of support groups at this church. And one of their support groups was led by a gentleman who used your book for a lot of their activities. So
that's the thing that you need to know about me. I'm huge. You got to realize how big I am. Just kidding. But the only reason I bring that book up as a reference point, since I knew you knew something about it, is, philosophically, there's all these things we can do to align our lifestyle with God's intentions, so, they've got, all these programs in churches, that Body by God program has been done in 4,000 churches. So that all of that's great. Nutrition, exercise, it's all obviously important. But the reality is, if you put me on a deserted island and said I could have a protein bar, I could have a treadmill, or I could have a chiropractor, it's going to be the chiropractor every time, because nothing can compete with the fact that your nervous system runs every organ, cell, and tissue and all healing in your body. So, you know, what you again are doing there, as far as what it does for people's health, it just can't be matched by anything going out on anywhere outside there in the community. You know, all of that other stuff is great, but the only person that can remove interference to your body's health and function is a chiropractor. And most importantly, a chiropractor that knows how to do it well, like Dr. Haig. So, you know, you really are in the perfect spot. And it's great that the church is doing that, but what they really need is, you know, that program was designed to be led by a chiropractor, because they have to realize in the absence of the chiropractic component of it, it still all falls apart. Because it's not, as a lot of people say, you are what you eat. But you know, if that was the case, then I would be a blueberry. But you know, it's not really what you eat. You are what you eat. It's your body has the ability to assimilate and use, and the way you assimilate and use nutrients is all managed through the nervous system and its ability to control the digestive system. So if I'm subluxated, I can eat well, I can exercise, and I still might get sick. In fact, if you go running and you've got a subluxation that's disrupting the nerve supply to your heart, and you run a lot, you might just have a heart attack. In fact, a good way to decide whether you really should start intensively exercising is to make sure you were checked by a chiropractor first, to make sure that all the joints were in alignment, the nervous system was healthy, heart and lungs are working like they should. Then push them through exercise. Don't exercise and then find out later that you only cause more stress to your body since you were subluxated. So that, and I say the same thing with diet too. When people sit in one of my nutrition classes, I always say, well, the first thing is you got to make sure your digestive system's working well. And we reference people, you got those people who no matter what they eat, they stay lean, they're healthy, they never get a disease. That's because their body functions so well, it really doesn't matter what they're eating. So that, you know, that's somebody who has it, you know, obviously just naturally has a healthy nervous system and such a strong system. As a result, they can get away with a lot. So the first thing we've got to do is make sure we're functioning well, and then feed the body properly, you know, secondarily to that. So you are, again, working in the number one place for health and wholeness. So when it comes to Body by God, it really starts with a good atlas. Now, kind of getting to some of the just some chiropractic training elements. We talk about, especially in a clinic like yours that does the kind of work that you do. I always say that we project. I was just on the phone with 10 of my local business unit leaders for chiropractic clinics, and I would say we project our own belief system onto the patient. So, you know, part of coming in is we establish what's wrong with them, that we've got this problem that requires this much care at this cost. Does that make sense? So basically, everybody there, whether you're a new patient or existing patient on maintenance, the first thing we have to establish is that this is the problem. So, like, for example, my mother found out she had a stroke, and she found out it was from her high blood pressure. My mother smoked 2 packs a day for 50 years. And so she now knew she had a problem called high blood pressure. And from that moment on, never missed the doctor's appointments and never missed taking her medication, because she recognized, here's the problem, here's the treatment, here's the cost. And she never missed. She was 100% committed to that the rest of her life. You know, for 20 years, was a perfect patient to her cardiologist, because she knew the problem, knew the treatment, and knew the price, and then never stopped doing exactly what she was supposed to do, or paying what she was supposed to say or pay. And what she never said was, well, isn't that too much money, or can't my insurance pay more? She never said that, because she knew it's a serious problem, and so I've got to invest in it, or I'm going to get a really negative outcome. And again, I'd already experienced a stroke as a result of not addressing it in the first place. So in our process, it's really important that we get those same 3 things accomplished. They come in and they have to really understand what a subluxation is, then understand their own subluxation and how serious their problems are, and why, as a result of that, it's worth this investment. And what we recognize, like, let's say your care is $5,000 or let's say it's $10,000. So first of all, it'd be more than worth it. $10,000 compared to a $50,000 back surgery or a $25,000 carpal tunnel surgery, which not only do those things cost 2.5 to 5 times more than $10,000 for chiropractic, but they don't work. In fact, in most cases, they fail and then you're permanently disabled as a result of them. So it's not just that it costs a lot more to end up in a medical crisis, but there's also no viable solution that adds value where you have this great rest of your life. I mean, it might save your life. It may stop you from, being paralyzed or dying of a heart attack, but you're not well, and in fact, back surgeries, you may not realize, they almost always fail. And all of them end up followed by another back surgery.
Right.
And the average person's had a back surgery or two. They're certainly not enjoying their life at that point. They're out there in wheelchairs and walkers, and they're not running, they're not leaping, and they're not walking down the beach with their loved one at 70 years old. They're incapacitated as a result of these couple of back surgeries. And again, spent 5 times what it would cost to have gotten it adjusted and corrected for $10,000. So we are trying to establish back to this idea of projecting onto other people, because I understand the value of our care. I understand the inherent intense dangers to not having the care. It's really easy for me to sit down with you and say, listen, you've got subluxation. It's damaged your nerve system. We don't correct it. The result, the consequences down the road don't look good. You need to invest the next 90 days, $10,000 in the commitment to your care to get well. And then from there, it's cheap, because maintenance is inexpensive. But the better part of not just getting some negative consequences, is you get to be healthy and alive. You get to experience your God-given potential. You can be out there achieving your purposes. Where my mom had a stroke at 49 and it destroyed her life, you could be one of those people who's 80 years old and still living a great life, serving a purpose, still playing with the grandkids. You could have this amazing future for decades to come, thanks to getting this corrected. And what's the value of that? What's the value of being permanently disabled by a stroke at 49 versus the next 40 years still living a purpose and enjoying your life? What's the value of 40 years of life? You can't even pick a number. So for only $10,000, you get those 40 years because of the care here. So to me, the money's kind of a no-brainer. And then also, we have I don't know if you guys have a prepaid discount, but we have a prepaid discount. And I'm also a financial guy. I know Dr. Haig is too. He's got investments and properties and things like that. So I think about I want to be a good steward of people's money that they're paying. So we do a 10% prepaid discount. I'm like, well, if you're committed to the care for the next 4 months, why would you not save the 10%? I mean, take that and invest it. Go put it in stock market. Go put it in a future investment for a rental property. Go make good use of that $400 and take the 10% off. Doesn't make sense to pay the whole price when you're just going to pay it anyways over 3 months. You might as well save it. So I pretty much get a prepay 9 out of 10 times because it just only makes sense, and it just gets it out of the way. We're not dealing with it. You're not dealing with it. And by the way, if you stopped during the care, you get your money back. So it's not like buying a house. You're not stuck. If it's whatever happens, you get your money back, whatever you didn't use. So to me, I'm pretty good at just getting it all set up at the beginning. And the reason I keep talking about this sort of prejudice and projection, I've got people that manage clinics of mine who make this comment to me. They like, everybody prepays because that's just how they like it. And I love that because, how do you know they like it that way? That's coming from your head. You think it's good, so they do it. But then I've got other people that say, oh, nobody likes to prepay. And it's the same thing. Well, how do you know they don't want to prepay? What made you put that in their head? Because I'm the opposite. I don't understand why everybody wouldn't prepay, because it doesn't make any sense to not save the 10% if your plan is to pay it anyways. We're actually we sold our house and we just moved in this rental. And I prepaid the rental. So this guy's never even heard of that. I'm like, he goes, you know, here's the rental. It's this much a month. I'm like, what if I prepaid it? It's like, what does that mean? I'm like, I'll pay the year. He's like, you'll pay the whole year. I'm like, yeah, but I want a 15% discount. It's like, so you'll write me one check right now? I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah. So
No brainer.
right. Absolutely no brainer. You know, I just have to worry that he's still a good landlord, but outside of that, you know, why wouldn't I prepay? I have to pay it anyways. I'm stuck here for 12 months. I signed a lease. I might as well save 15%. I mean, that's a lot on a house. So, you know, why wouldn't they want to do that on the care? But again, it's kind of all what I'm projecting on them. So, you know, so as you go into it, it's, you know, it's really in our own heads. We've got to establish, number one, that we take the problem, you know, deadly serious. And I know Dr. Haig is a great person to teach why these problems really are so deadly serious. But the flip side of that, it's not just that there are these dangerous consequences, but the life you get to lead as a result of taking care of it. You know, speaking of church, you know, I was in church the other day and this on Sunday, and there's 80-year-old lady stands up and is on fire because she has this purpose of she leads the women. She's been leading women's wellness for the church for 40 years. And they have this big women's event. They're bringing in a famous singer and praise and worship and all these speakers to talk about, you know, just women's spirituality. And she's fired up and she's 80, but she's jumping up and down and yelling. I'm like, man, my mom was confined to a wheelchair at 49 because of subluxation and poor health. She missed out on what could have been another 30 years on fire for God, serving her purposes had she done something about her health.
Right.
And that my story is my parents took really lousy care of themselves, which is what got me into health. They both smoked and were overweight and massively subluxated. Their x-rays were really, to this date, the two worst x-rays I've ever seen were my own parents. And they were only in their 40s when I saw their x-rays. So I've seen, you know, that gap, like you could be on stage jumping up and down, serving God in your purpose, or God knows what will happen if you let this decay for another 5 years and that consequence. So, you know, there's the negative and then there's the positive. And obviously we like to get to the positive as quick as we can. So once we own that, and then the value becomes kind of a no-brainer. For $10,000, you could save tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars down the road, plus, you know, achieve your God-given potential. Now that's a pretty good trade. And the good thing is Dr. Haig doesn't charge $10,000. It's less than that. I just use that number because we should be probably charging $10,000. It really should be more money given the value we're providing is off the charts. So that's kind of the core of it. Then from there, the only thing, and this is just, and I don't know your situation exactly, and it is tough to lose because I know you certainly can use another member, but with administrative stuff, you know, what I try to do when it's overwhelming, if there is a time we could say, okay, if we could schedule times each week, like here's when I'm going to sit down and have protected, uninterrupted time to do the administrative work, so that during patient hours, I can kind of block it off in my brain, not just in my time, to really focus on serving the people. Because once again, if we keep loving and serving them, and as well as do the leadership work to keep them on track, in the end, we'll have somebody else there. You'll have learned the administrative side because it's really not that complicated. It just takes some time. In the end, we'll get that part handled. But if we're losing the patients because we're stressed about the administration, I always say, then we'll have plenty of time to handle the administration because there's nobody here. And I've experienced that for real. We get so worried about the backup of administrative work, the patients start disappearing. I'd rather have it back up a bit. Again, schedule time each week that we will focus on it and reduce that pile the best we can during those focused hours. But let's keep the patients happy and coming in, because that kind of solves everything in the long run. In the meantime, we'll get an admin person. It's a lot easier to find an admin person than it is to find somebody like you that loves people, you know, understands chiropractic, is passionate about seeing a smile on people's face. I don't know if Dr. Haig told you this, but the early chiropractors, they all had their business card. I love that you said that. Their business cards said, "Keep smiling."
Mm-hmm.
That was
That's
the
from
original. Yeah, what's that?
That was from BJ. BJ would have the keep smiling cards. I made some up. I need to make them again. I like those.
Yeah, well, that was Dick Santos' card. It said "Keep Smiling." He was my idol when I was younger. But so when you said you like to see people smile, I don't know if you were fully aware of this, but that was the original intention of chiropractic, if not the only intention, was that you created a happy life for people. The original, when he talks about BJ Palmer, the idea was when you get adjusted, that reconnects you to your God-given potential. Since everything does work through the nerve, the system God gave us to run the body and help our body achieve his purposes is the nervous system. So with a healthier nervous system, we're more capable of being what God called us to be and achieving his purposes and fulfilling our destiny. And so obviously the idea of get adjusted and keep smiling is powerful. So I love that you said, I like to see people smiling. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, I think that's, she has that gift for sure. And, the administrative stuff, it does seem overwhelming, and we've had a few hiccups this year. And so some of that stuff had been put on to the side, haven't been completed.
And it's a process for me to let it go and block it out. I think I'm finally there, that during service hours, I can focus, my attention where it needs to be. It's just, there's a part of me that's kind of always been a little bit of an overachiever. And I like to have my ducks in a row before I fall asleep at night. And I like to start my day fresh every day, brand new day, not thinking about, oh my gosh. And that's why I'm no longer an RN in a hospital with 10 people all having strokes and heart attacks at the same time, because I just never felt that I could give that care that I wanted to be able to give. So it's more of just the things I've put in my own brain, of wanting to make sure I've done everything correctly, properly. But you're right, focusing on them is ultimately why we're here. So
yeah, and we're eventually going to love that trait about you. That character trait that you're mentioning is going to eventually be extremely valuable. It just is, it's a little challenging in a time like this when we don't have all the resources we need, and you're new. My best team members have that trait also. They can't live with something kind of that needs to get addressed right away and put it to the side. It just, well, in their mind, it all has to be addressed right away. So everything needs to be addressed right away. And I'm like, listen, that's I agree, but it's not an emergency. It can wait 2 hours until we have time to get to it. So eventually we'll really appreciate that about you. It's just kind of challenging right now. Well, so great to meet you. Congratulations on this new role. You guys are going to be changing the world here soon.
Thanks, Doc. We really appreciate you. Any closing words or anything, anybody? Thanks a lot. And I'll talk to you.
Bless you guys.
Bless you too. Thank you.
Bye.